Hello, beautiful people. Welcome back to another edition of Dad Advice. Today's Thursday, July 16th. Go ahead and grab the Reddit stream here and put my contact info in here in case somebody wants to holler and chat through some of the stuff. And I had a question. Actually, I have to go back and forth a little bit here with my housekeeping. Let me go ahead and just start with that. Get that in there. All right. Housekeeping's done with that, but I did want to go ahead and read a question that someone had posted after our conversation the other day. She'd thrown this my way. So let's see what we got here. I'll read the question and talk about it. Okay, here's what she said. I find myself struggling with whether or not I should try and build a relationship with my father. Some days I see other people with their dads and I feel the need to emulate that. But then I realize that there's a huge difference between those dads and my own. Other days I realize the weight of what he's done and go back to hating him. I'm constantly at war with myself about this and feel like I should just ignore that part of my life. But I can't help but want a dad. So I asked, what did he actually do? And she replied, overall abusive and a cheater. He moved my family from here to there so he could be with his mistress. Consistent domestic violence, rape, etc. He was kicked out of the house by CPS a couple months ago because he beat and attempted to rape my mother in front of my 4-year-old brother, who then told his teacher. So now he's out of the house. And they plan on bringing him back. But this whole time, he's tried to guilt trip me by saying he's dying, God will punish me, that I'm a bad daughter and all that. He hasn't taken accountability for a single thing. And when I mustered up the courage to call him out on it, he called me names and threatened to beat me. So that was what someone wrote to me. Now, the truth is, I think she already knows. Someone who's articulate enough to articulate her story like that, to me, it's clear. They're also clear on what they actually need to do. It's just not an easy thing, right? So they're not really looking for advice, right? I don't think you're looking for advice. I think you're just looking perhaps for someone to say, yeah, you're right, right? Sometimes we need that. Sometimes, right, no matter where we are in life, no matter how young or how old we are, sometimes it feels good for someone just to say, yeah, you know what? I think you got that and you got it right. And that's sometimes what we can look for from a parent. Well, that's a dangerous thing also. We can talk a little bit about that later maybe. So I think you know what to do in this situation. And I think it's the hard thing to do, but you don't have a choice. Your dad's clearly not a good person. And it's unfortunate that you have a dad who's not a good person. And and sometimes, like when people say things to me about how their dad's not a good person or their mom's not a good person, or anybody says something, their ex isn't a good person, whatever, I take it with a grain of salt, because there is so much, and this is what I want to share with you guys today, is there's anytime you're feeling that someone's not a good person, I want you to take a step back and not be necessarily so judgmental, right? Because sometimes when we're hurt, we make people out to be not good people, when in fact, they're just people, just like us, right? But in this case, it's obviously, hearing her story, it's clear that he's not a good person. So you don't really have a choice, unfortunately, but to disassociate. And also to really appreciate the fact that it's going to be hard for you to do that. So look, I'm just sending you strength. That's really all I can do here. You don't need my advice. You know what to do. But I'll send you my best wishes, and also I'll send you my feeling of that, you know, I really think you got this. So here's a person that really thinks you got this situation, because that I can't offer. So I offer that, and I hope that as you figure things out for yourself, it'll go easier, and the pain will go away. But there's no relationship, right? And I've said this before. You know, when someone's abusive, there is no relationship, and I think that's the important thing to remember. That relationship means there's give and there's take and there's kindness. There are certain basic things to relationship that if you don't have, you don't actually have relationship. You might have some connection, but it's not relationship. And there's a clear difference and differentiator. So I think the best thing, in fact, you can do, maybe even for him, is not put up with it, right? Because maybe he'll wake up a little bit. Maybe he'll be like, oh, wait a second, I've lost something because of my action, right? Because if everybody in his environment just gives in, then he's never going to take a step back and question his actions, question if he's doing something wrong. And obviously, if he never questions, then he'll never change. So I send you strength. I send you strength. Although I think the strength's already inside. I can see it in your question itself. All right, let's see what we have on today's questions. Details 22 asks, how's your day been so far? It has been pretty kick-ass. Thank you. Details 22. I put my phone number up there, 470-575-0111. If you want to talk through, if you've been here before, and I've talked about, you know, perhaps looking for your big false belief. If you want to call me, we can do that together. I'm happy to do that exercise with you. And then I also I have 2 channels I put up there. Thank you to everybody that did subscribe. I got to 100, so I don't need any more subscribers. But I do try to live stream them, and they're up on YouTube, and it actually has a name that you can find now, which is kind of cool. So thank you to all you guys for helping me do that. And then here on r/VDad for virtual dad, where I kind of post them as well, because it's a little easier to find. So who am I? I'm Josh. I'm from Atlanta. I'm 45. I'm a dad, 15-year-old, a 19-year-old, and a 20-year-old. And I just come here a couple times a week now. I was doing it daily, but I'm kind of, now it's a little bit more sporadically, to just give general life advice. So the first thing I want to be clear is I'm not like a professional, you know, but I've had some experience with life, and I'm happy to share those experiences with you. And hopefully what you'll find is that they're a little different perhaps than others. But the main thing with advice is that I want you to take what applies to you and ignore the rest, because know that at the end of the day, nobody knows yourself better than you. And I fundamentally believe that about every individual. No one knows what's right for me better than myself. Now, sometimes it might be a little convoluted, and I'll have to, you know, work through some things to figure out what I actually really believe. But that's the reality. So take those things that sound good to you, and the rest, you can let them go. So the good thing is, last time I spoke, there was a lot of conversation and a lot of questions that I didn't get to. So I'm just gonna head over to those and kind of talk from that. So I think this is it. Let me see if this is the one from 2 or 3 days ago where we had the crowd. Yeah, that's it. So let me see what we got here. All right. So that's where I'm going from. I'm going from comments from 2 or 3 days ago when people asked, you know, the questions that they asked. Let's see what we got here. Gotta find. So and the nice thing is people do kind of do some cool commenting amongst themselves in here. So here's a question. What would you accept if your daughter introduced you to a man that you think is nice but not good enough for her? So I like that question. I thought that was a thoughtful question. So at the end of the day, the people that you select, that my kids select, that anybody selects, that's their choice. And just like I was talking about before, I think it's important to remember that there are aspects, I think, that our parents can tell about us. And this is an important thing, right? So there are certain aspects that they've seen us since we were born, right? They've seen us since we were in diapers. And there's certain patterns that we've probably had throughout our life that they can reflect on. And we can learn from that. Now, the flip side to that is that they also create their own kind of cognitive biases and when we reinforcements, they create their own reinforcements of our behaviors and perhaps even do that within us, which means in some ways there's a bias to anything our parents say. So anything we listen to our parents, I think we have to think about it from both angles. One is, are we kind of just listening because we're in that, child's position where we're just listening to what they have to say? And that on the one hand. And the other hand, respecting that they actually might have something intelligent to say. But then it all comes back to us, right? It all comes back to us deciding, well, what's our heart? Right? We really focus on what do we really think of this, right? Is this pushing us in the right direction or in the wrong direction for who we are? And we have to look at it with honesty. The eyes of honesty are what I want you to take and view all this stuff. Any of this personal growth stuff we talk about, any of this living we talk about, has to be through the goal. The goal is to honestly approach things, right? Because if you take that approach, I think what you'll find is that you'll get somewhere productive, and you eventually will stop fooling yourself. Might not be today, might not be tomorrow, but eventually, if you keep approaching it through those eyes, you'll get to the point where you'll actually find your own truth. All right. So anyway, so I think that's the thing here. At the end of the day, whoever my kids choose, that's their decision. And that might be hard for me. I think it's hard for a parent to allow the kids to be who they are. We have all these hopes and aspirations. We see them perhaps making mistakes that we made as a kid that we don't want them to have the pain to live through again. But to a large extent, we have to let them make their mistakes. And sometimes maybe it's easier to make them when they're younger even, because they're not as big of a mistake as when you make them when you're older. And I think that's maybe a mistake I made of not giving my kids enough, letting them make enough mistakes when they were younger. So let me come back to this. See, someone's calling in. So I'm going to grab this and, chit chat. Hey there.
Hi.
How are you?
Anyone ever called you before?
Yeah, I get, someone calls, I would say every, 7 or 8 times that I do this.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So welcome.
Hi. I recently went through my first heartbreak. I don't really know what to do.
I'm sorry to hear that. How long were you guys together?
Oh, I don't know. It wasn't for very long. Maybe for some people. I met him at the start of this year, but I had never gotten into a committed or serious relationship before. And I guess especially with coronavirus, it felt like time was passed much slowly.
Sure. And so this is your first kind of major relationship that you've ever really kind of given yourself over into?
Yeah, well, the thing is, we never even actually committed to a relationship because you didn't want to,
But you did. You made that commitment, though.
Yeah, I guess so.
And was it the first time that you've done that?
Yeah, it was the first time I've ever felt this way about someone.
Yeah, and it feels kind of like someone ripped out your heart and just kind of left you on the ground, right?
Yeah, I think one of the worst feelings in the world is knowing that someone you care about, someone that used to care about you, doesn't care about you anymore.
Right. Yeah, no, I mean, I totally hear that. And I'm really sorry. I mean, it's hard to lose a person, right? And, breakup is a death in a real way, right? It's a loss of that person to you. And it's more complicated than that too, because there's that personal aspect that we feel that comes along with it.
Well, I'm just, really concerned about myself because I feel myself going back into this hole of depression, and also I haven't been doing much for the past 2 weeks. Sometimes I forget to eat. I can barely get up in the morning.
Do you have a good friend group?
Yeah, but it's kind of hard to stay connected with them, especially because I've been staying indoors. Like, COVID isn't really helping.
But I think that's,
Either.
yeah. Because I mean, I think that for me, whenever I've been kind of in that depressive state, the best thing for me is just having my friends check in on me and letting them know, because you do have so much love that surrounds you, right? From your friends and your family. And sometimes we can be a little embarrassed even when something like this happens, because we've talked about someone so positively, and then we have to call back and say, hey, you know what? It didn't work out. And that can be a little embarrassing sometimes. So, but the reality is that all these people that you surround yourself with that love you, like, just like you love them, and you'd want to be there for them, they want to be there for you. So really, and I think you've mentioned some of the things yourself that I think you already know that you need to do, which is you just kind of have to get outdoors, start taking some walks, and kind of reconnecting. And there is that desire to kind of curl up in a ball, right, and kind of push away the world when we're in pain. But I think that what I found for myself is that just kind of folds in on itself. And so for me, I need to go to the other, kind of push myself to the other side and kind of get out and talk to people constantly, even when I'm not. I mean, honestly, this is what we all during COVID need to be doing, is that even when we're not necessarily in this in a negative place, right? It's just during COVID, we need to be reaching out to people, right? We need to be creating connection, because it is such a lonely place to be, especially if you're living by yourself, wherever you are in the world. So, which is part of why I do this, honestly, right? So it gives me a chance to connect with other people. Thank you for doing this, by the way. Oh, absolutely. My pleasure. And thanks for being brave enough. Look, see, I know that since you called, I know that you're a brave person, right? And I know you're a strong person. So, I think it's about kind of taking some of these lessons that maybe you learned from this last relationship. And you're going to have a lot of relationships. I mean, I know it doesn't really help, but with this in the micro, but I always say, like, if you can just see the macro picture of life, which is there will be another relationship. And that's the weird thing, is that, I can tell you from my own experience, you'll be in another relationship and you'll look back and you'll say, I can't even believe I was in a relationship with that other person. So, and at some point in your life, you can't even remember the name of the person that you were in a relationship with, which is kind of a crazy concept. But, I was thinking about that the other day, where, there are these people that, from a long, long time ago that I couldn't really remember their name anymore. So these pains, they pass. And so we just have to find our own inner strength and kind of use that to guide us in these times. So, I mean, can you see that within yourself?
Sorry, can I see what?
Can you feel your own inner strength?
Honestly, I'm not sure. It feels like it's been diminishing.
Okay, but you can see, but you can still feel that core, right, of you.
Sure. Yeah.
So that's what I want you to hold on to, right? I want you to really, okay. You're going to take that and you're going to shine that out, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And if you need to, I'll post this and you can come back and watch it again every day. And just remember that you got to go kind of grab your inner strength and kind of keep it moving forward in the world. I mean, that's what we all have to do, right? That's what this world is. This world is, constantly kind of collapsing on itself, and it's us constantly moving forward into it and creating, right? So it's a creative action that's what we get to do in this world. So, but I'm not taking, I don't want to take away from any of your pain, because, I do know how painful that can be. I've been, obviously, everybody's been on that side, at some point. And the other thing is you'll learn from it, right? I'm sure there's going to be aspects, I don't know how many, if you haven't been in a lot of relationships, every time you go through a breakup, you learn something about what you want in a relationship and how to approach relationships. And some people,
Yeah, for sure.
right, will go to the extreme, right? So and say, well, you know what, I'm not gonna open myself up next time. So I don't want you to do that. I want you to find kind of that way where you can stay open but stay protected, and it's a gradual dance as the relationship progresses of kind of opening up as opposed to just totally opening up and letting go, which, you know, and that's just something I think you learn through relationships.
Yeah, I don't regret meeting him because now I have a better understanding of what I want in future partners. It's just I don't know how I can forget about him when almost everything around me just reminds me of him.
Well, and I don't think you have to. Do you feel a need to forget about him? Meaning, you know, and
I don't know, like maybe it would help.
Right. Well, and if there specific things, are there like specific things that he gave you, you know, around the apartment, or, you know, that you can kind of put somewhere else? Like, I do think that that's not a you know, a healthy thing to have around, or things that really are, you know, so any of that stuff where you like look at and it's like, oh yeah, I mean, you can't do anything about the times, but I think you can do something about specific items and you know, kind of one by one remove them. Because you don't need to throw it in your face, right?
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you. I don't want to take away too
No.
much of your time.
No, I don't. I mean, honestly, this is what I'm here for, like, at the end of the day. So, you know, I'm happy to sit with you and do this. You know, it's there's no real goal to any of that. If that makes sense. So whatever. If it's helpful for you, I'm happy to stay. If you want, you can hang up at any time too. So,
Okay.
you know, whatever you need, I'm happy to.
I don't know. Do you have any like last words of advice?
I mean, I think you got it. I think you got this. I think it's normal. There's actually there's a r/breakups or something like that, where you know it can hang out there a little bit, and I think it seemed like I was out there once, and there's this pretty supportive community, and I don't remember exactly what it was, but you know, I think just getting rid of the things that really remind you, because you don't want those physical things around, and then you got to move. You got to move on. Remember, appreciate what he brought to you, right? Don't negate it. We always have this tendency to negate all the good. So don't negate all the good, and just realize that he was there for some aspect to share your life, to learn something, and now you're going to find someone even better, and you will. And then I can promise you'll find that guy. And I don't know if it'll be in a year, I don't know if it'll be in 5 years, right? You might have 10 guys in between, but you find that one person, and you realize that all of this other stuff was a build up to find that person.
Mm-hmm.
So I hope you find that person sooner than later.
Thank you.
And feel free to reach out.
Okay.
Be well.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Oh, that's very brave. So, all right. I think that's a hard place to be. We've all been there too, right? I mean, everybody who's watching can throw some, couple words of something into what you were saying. I think, in your own experience. I think the nice thing is people who typically watch are typically pretty kind. So, throw some words of encouragement to our friend who just called in. Maybe she can come back and, she can watch this again later, and it can be something that can maybe be a guiding light for her out of her own personal pain right now. Okay, let's see what we have here. How do I deal with the kind of emotional trauma from my last relationship that makes it difficult to pursue a new one? Okay, so, and I assume you mean that you've kind of closed off because you've been hurt. So the first thing I'll tell you is it might just take some time, right? Might just take some time. And you have to allow time takes time, as my friend says. I think that's brilliant words that she taught me, and you just have to give it the time that it takes. And part of it also is probably learning to really appreciate yourself more. And what I mean by that is that I think so much in relationship, especially when we're younger, I'm going to find that person and they're almost my savior, right? That's kind of the perspective we almost take. It's like I'll be whole and then I can do whatever I want, but the reality is that all fades away. It's just this like foolishness that we create, which isn't real. So kind of coming to realize that a relationship won't be everything. It won't make you whole. No relationship will make you whole. You'll feel whole when you start a relationship. You can look at a person, they feel they totally understand you. And then over time, you come to realize that no, they don't really totally understand you. And there are aspects of them that you thought, that you no longer find attractive. So, and it's just the nature of relationship with a person, right? These all relationships. And I think it's important to recognize like the phases of relationship, right? There's a reason why we call it, the honeymoon period, right? Where you can't say anything wrong. It's just, you go through that period. And then there's a reason if you talk to old people, they're going to make, someone asked on yesterday or whenever the last stream was, like, what's with all these people making fun of marriage? And it's because eventually people get, their challenges and they don't know how to meet those challenges and they just get bitter, right? Either they get divorced or they get bitter. Those are the two ways that things can go. So if there's not awareness that comes to relationships. So I would say that, really just focusing on yourself and making yourself the best person you can be. And what you're going to find is the better and the more balanced person you are, the more balanced the person you're going to be with is. And I read this in a book once, and I thought it was really insightful, which is that we end up with people who are kind of at a similar emotional place as we are, because, right? So if someone's not as emotionally intelligent as we are, then we're not going to want to be with them. And if we're not as emotionally intelligent as the person who we're with, they're not going to want to be with us. So what ends up happening is that we're going to be in a relationship with someone on a similar emotional intelligence. And so the goal is to, work on yourself and become more emotionally intelligent so you can kind of level up with the kind of person you're going to be in relationship with, if that makes sense. To me, that's the goal, from a relationship perspective. So, but the reality is that we have to go into a certain point in a relationship, we have to go whole heart in. But there still has to be some aspect, and it's a tricky balance, right? How do you say how much is too much, right? How do you say, well, I'm going to give you my whole heart into this, but not be attached, right? Because the pain comes from the attachment, right? That's when a person passes away. The pain comes from the attachment, right? Someone dies in your family, it doesn't bother me because I don't know them. I'm not attached to them, right? And vice versa. So the pain from a relationship breakup comes from the attachment that we've created with that person. So how can you be totally attached to a person, yet if they decide to leave, not be fundamentally broken by that? And I think the truth is what I've kind of found, even when I had to break up this past time, was that the sadness was there for losing that person, but it wasn't as like gut-wrenching because there was no personal aspect to it, right? So it was just a realization that it didn't work, and so we had to leave each other, and I was very sad about that because I loved that person, but there was also a realization that it didn't work, and it wasn't a practical relationship. So the level of trauma from the breakup just wasn't as much, because at the end of the day, I was still kind of happy with myself, which is something that's taken a long time for me to work on. Okay, so, but either way, these are hard. This is a really hard topic, right? We wish her well. How to lose weight. Well, The dad answer is you eat less calories than you burn. That's how you lose weight. It's kind of that simple. It takes discipline. I think one thing that's a misnomer is that exercise is really going to help weight, and it's really not. It's about diet. It's all about diet. So I think that finding a diet that works for you and that you can stick to is important. I do keto. I actually don't do keto. I do low carb. Keto is very high fat. I just do low carb when I need to lose weight, and it works really well for me. I think different body types will work with different diets, but at the end of the day, it takes tremendous self-discipline. My kids got ice cream today. It took tremendous self-discipline not to get ice cream. Someone sent me a photo of a tart. It took tremendous discipline for me to be like, hell, I'm just gonna go get a tart, right? So just diets to me is a lot about discipline and what you're eating. And you have to make that commitment that it's really worth it to you, or else it just falls apart. And you have to find something that is a diet that's sustainable, right? Because if not, you're not going to stick with it. So then what's really the point? So can you find that balance where you can have a little bit of good stuff along the way, that you're not hungry all the time? But I would say low carb for me personally has worked really well. And what that really means for me, for what it's worth, is I don't do any sugar when I'm doing low carb, and I kind of come on and off it. So no sugars and no carbs. It's probably kind of that simple, but then anything else is kind of open. So, but that means no fruit, no wheat, no potatoes. But another nice thing is I don't eat a lot of processed food. And I think processed food has a lot of just extra calories. Whereas if you stop eating processed food, your caloric intake just naturally is a little bit lower. So I think that's I think that's part of why the diet works too. Okay. Got Ralph on, oh man. Ralph, I can't do it, man. Anyway, I just want to say thank you. You gave me some advice a while ago to try doing a Reddit stream to help me to become a bit more extrovert, and I play guitar and answer questions, and I feel more comfortable to people. That's awesome, man. So awesome. I'm glad that worked. That's great news. I'll check it out. I'll definitely check that out. What's my accent? Isn't that funny how, like, people have, I don't hear my accent, right? I find that to be the funniest thing, is that everyone has an accent but you, right? So I'm from the US, I'm from the South. But I don't really have a Southern accent. I don't think there's certain words that are Southern that I say. But in general, it's just going to be a kind of more a metropolitan American Southern accent. Do I like sea shanties? I don't actually know what a sea shanty is. I'm gonna have to look that up. I really want to say thank you. I'm about to start high school, and I want to be a better person because I'm not satisfied with myself. I want to be more social. I want to be more confident. Your dad advice thing has helped me to build up the courage. Nikozek, you're most welcome. And I'm sure that as you keep building your confidence, you're going to have more and more confidence, because that's what happens. We see our success in our confidence, and we're focusing, right? Whatever we focus on is what becomes the natural progression for us. So if we just keep seeing we're confident and we see that it works, then it just keeps growing in that direction. So that's awesome. Really awesome. How would you react if your son is gay? I've talked about this a bit. I don't really have a particular issue with it, so it's not really an issue. I'll share that, at the end of the day, all I care about is that my kids are happy and healthy. Right? Those are the two things, right? I don't want just happy, and I don't want, just healthy. They have to be happy and healthy. So that's all I care about. If there's a question there, I'm happy to talk to the question, because there are other things I could share, but we'll just leave it at that for now. How can I admit I was wrong? That's a hard one, isn't it? Admitting we're wrong. That is a hard one. So I guess it depends who you're having to admit it to, right? The first thing is you have to admit it to yourself. I think that's the hardest part, Can you really look yourself in the eye and say, I fucked up? And not kick yourself as you'd say it, right? So it's easy to say that and say, oh yeah, because I'm an idiot, right? But can you say, I messed up because I'm human? That's the first question, right? Can you really, within your own self, allow yourself to be human? And none of us, I can't do it. You probably can't do it sometimes. That's just our nature. It's hard for us to really allow that human nature to be itself, because society's told us that it's inappropriate, and we believe society at some point in time, and so that's what we do now. So the first thing is that I want you to learn to admit to yourself that you don't have to be perfect. That's the first step. And then once you can do that, I think you'll find that you can admit to others that you don't have to be perfect either. And part of that is being able to admit that you were wrong. So I guess that's how I'd approach it. Great question. Never really thought about it. I like questions that make me really kind of step back. What's the right way to break up with someone? Well, I mean, I think it depends where you are in your relationship cycle. I do believe that as you're texting somebody, or you've met them once or twice, I'd say if you've met them maybe 2 times, up to 2 times, send a text saying, hey, it's really nice to meet you. I just don't see us as a long-term partner. And, if you want to be friends, you can say, I'd love to be friends. And if you're not interested in being friends, I wish you well. If you've had sex with them, or, maybe you've hung out 3 or 4 times, you probably should do it. Well, if you've had sex, you should do it in person. I just believe that's the human thing to do. But, and again, I'm a little older. Maybe I don't quite know how the younger generation really views sex at this point. Excuse me 1 second. It's Shakespeare. Yeah. The world is your oyster. Kids were talking about. So, so where was I? Oh, so yeah, breaking up. So yeah, I think once you've had sex, I think if, that's the right thing to do. Right. And breaking up is a brave action, right? I think we can all recognize that we have to really be brave enough to break up. In fact, I think that's why a lot of people have affairs, is just because they can't break up. So they're like, I'll just have an affair, and then, it'll break up naturally. Right. So, so you gotta be brave, right? I want everybody who's watching, right? And I think if you're brave enough to watch and listen to what I'm talking about, you're probably brave enough to be brave in life. Because that's what life takes. Life takes bravery. All right. To kind of wade through the forest with all the things around us that potentially could harm us, and not live in fear. Right? We don't want to live in fear. We want to be brave, because I think a brave person, that's the idea, is that we're not letting that fear, influence us. Right? We're acknowledging there's some fear, right? But it doesn't influence us. And sometimes, hopefully, we don't even see the fear. We're just brave. So, but I think that's just it. I think you just have to, I think that's the right thing to do. I think when people stop texting, I think that's kind of rude. And I think that people deserve some closure at any point in a relationship. And as much closure as you can give them, that's your opportunity to be kind, right? To bring in a little bit of kindness into the world. So, so there's no easy way. There's no right way. I think there are probably wrong ways. Right. But I think it's just about being kind when you do it. Right. Because it didn't work out for whatever reason. It's nothing personal. It didn't work out. Okay. I know it's a complicated topic, but how do you find value in yourself? Great question, and I'll end with that question today. Finding value in ourselves. It's kind of a broad question. I was asking, how do I find value in myself? Well, the first thing you have to do is you have to stop comparing yourself, right? Because as long as you're comparing yourself to other people, you're not really seeing your value. You're comparing your value to someone else's. That's the first step. The next thing is I want you to realize the subtle influence of society. And I was thinking about this the other day. We call it, right? If I ask you what's your net worth, right? How much are you worth, right? And I'll give you a financial figure. That doesn't really make a lot of sense, does it? Why would your net worth be financial? Your net worth should be all the nice things you've done. Maybe you keep count of, right? But that's not how we do it in society, right? Society says your net worth is how much money you have. So I want you to start recognizing all these false ideas that are floating around in your own head about what creates value, right? And kind of question them and say, wait a second, actually, that's not actually what I believe. I don't believe all these societal things, and maybe you do, but I think that some of them are going to influence you to not see all your positives. And the third thing would probably be what I talk about a lot, which is viewing yourself as a whole person. And the idea here being that typically we focus on the one or two negatives that we have, and we just kind of focus on those, like that's who we are, as opposed to really taking a pen to paper. And this would be an exercise I'm going to give you. I want you to write 50 things about yourself that are awesome. 50 things. So you're going to keep going until you hit 50. And it could be something as simple as, I'll talk to a stranger on the street and smile at them, right? And you're gonna have to think, you'll get to 20 or 30, probably pretty easy, right? Of things you do that are kind aspects or, but I want you to get to 50 if you can. Actually, I've never tried it. I don't even know if I could get to 50. But the point being, I want you to start really seeing the list of all of your positives. And then what I think you're going to find is that you're going to stop focusing on the micro, but rather kind of look at it from that macro perspective, and you're going to see yourself in a better light. So those are the three things that kind of come to mind: the whole person, filtering out what society tells you creates value, and then comparing yourself to other people. So I think those are the some keys, and I'm sure there are more. If I keep thinking about it, maybe I can think of some more keys. But those are the ones that come to immediate mind of finding value, of finding your own inner value. And then also for all those negative things, right? Those couple negatives that you have, I need you to stop those. Right? I want you to bring awareness to those, which is going to be the process of questioning, why do you believe those things about yourself, and are they really true? And what I think you're going to find is that one by one, those are going to peel away as you bring some awareness to that false belief of I'm not valuable. And you start asking, is that really true? And you're going to start getting rid of some more of those things, and then all you're left with are all the positives. So, so those are the ones that come to mind immediately. If you want another kind of modality, would be if you can find a guided meditation on the internet where it just talks about, where it's just somebody sitting there and saying, you're of value, right? So it's just that repetitive, inner voice, right? Because so much of this, right, is this inner voice that we've put into our head, right? When we're a kid, we kind of speak it out, or we hear it from our parents, and then it kind of incorporates into the annals of our mind, right? So what I want you to try to do is maybe change some of that mindset, some of those voices, and some meditation, like, hearing it over and over, I am of value, some of those positive messaging. You do that every day for a month, and it's going to start changing how you're thinking about yourself as well. So I see I have 30 seconds left. I know it says maybe 2.5 minutes, but I don't really know if it's going to cut out on me or not. So, because sometimes it's kind of a crapshoot. I thank you all for joining me. If you scroll to the top, you can see my YouTube channel or my Reddit subreddit if you're curious to hear these whenever I post them. I try to post them both there. They're always on the Reddit, not necessarily on YouTube. So until next time, I hope everyone is well, and thank you for joining. Cheers.